let's get into a little bit of Alabama Crimson Tide.
Let's go.
Chris, what are your thoughts on Alabama this year?
All right, man. I'll break it down like I normally do. Then Christian usually comes behind me here. Guys, if you don't know, Christian follows up. He's a stat whore. He will break it down player by player, both sides of the ball, special teams. That's usually what he does. But I've been hot all year on Bama. I've had kind of a different take over the offseason with the spring game and just all the, I don't want to say drama, but just what's going on with the quarterback situation in Alabama. So I'll start off here real quick, guys. We all know last year, 11-2. They were 6-2 in conference. They had the loss to LSU, Tennessee, right? Here's a big stat here that really gets me last year. We all know who the fucking quarterback was last year of Alabama, the returning Heisman candidate, or excuse me, not candidate, winner, Bryce Young, right? And I think we all know what, he was drafted 1 overall at the Panthers this year. But they averaged 41.1 points per game, Christian. That's a lot of points. That was 4th overall last year. It's very impressive. In the SEC, a conference where I know defense is definitely played. They were at 11th in yards per game at damn near almost 500 yards per game. That you can't ask more of an offense than that, which kind of will lead into my next segment here. If you guys know where I'm going with this, they only gave up. I mean, this doesn't look bad when you look at it from this perspective. Only 18.2 opponents points per game, which finished 9th. So they had a top 5 offense, Christian, a top 10 defense by stats. This is why you don't always want to dig super deep into this, but that was 9th in the country last year. Strength of schedule was 25th or 26th in the nation. That's obviously it's the SEC. I'm not an SEC guy, but Christian is, and I'm not a dummy. SEC is the best conference in the world. It has been for quite a while now. As I touched on, their only losses were to LSU and Tennessee. The problem is they gave up 32 points against LSU. They also gave up 52, Christian, to Tennessee. Here's my big question, Christian, and I'm going to let you get into the stats and go through your thing here in a minute. Like I said, who the fuck's their quarterback? I mean, we got Tyler Buckner coming from Notre Dame, who I thought was a failed quarterback there. I mean, he played a little bit and didn't start, and they play him again, and he's got some time over there. Wasn't impressed. I just wasn't by him personally. Jalen Milroe, we've seen him come in last year. Played a couple games, A&M game. Kick and run. I mean, it looks like a fucking bodybuilder out there. Every time I mention his name, that's who I picture. But can't throw the ball. We saw the spring game, him and the other guy I'm talking about, Ty Simpson. Mm-hmm. Very disappointed in the spring game with Alabama. Actually, I thought I put them up with Colorado and a couple other teams that had just piss poor spring games overall. Tommy, go ahead. I want you to touch on this a little bit. There's a lot to talk about Bama here.
Yeah, I think that, for me it's weird because, when we talk about, Alabama football, right? Like, who in the hell would have ever thought, right, that a 2-loss season would be considered a down year for a team? But that just speaks to the dominance of this Alabama dynasty, right? And I know everyone's going to see all this Georgia shit behind me, and they're going to say, oh, my God, what are you going to say now? And I know, look, I have to respect what Saban's done because he's done it for so long. But you kind of touched on it, Chris. The biggest question mark is quarterback, right? And in years past, I mean, they've had some less than stellar quarterbacks who've looked elite because the team around them has been so good and they get so much production back. But this year is not going to quite be like that, right? The offensive line at times last year didn't look all that great. They didn't have a receiver that had over 700 receiving yards last year. They lose, one of the best running backs in the country in Jahmyr Gibbs. Some of their wide receivers that you would really like to see kind of coming up have transferred out. They've gotten, and I know where this is kind of going, right? But there's a lot of question marks on this Bama team on both sides of the ball, and I think it's going to be really interesting. You touched on the quarterback aspect of it. Jalen Milroe, right? He's, in the limited times that we've seen him, he did not look like an elite quarterback. He looked like he can run the ball really well. He's probably going to struggle with some accuracy at times. His wide receivers are going to struggle with drops, right? Which, if you've got a defense that ranks top 10 and can hold people, Tennessee, Ole Miss, these big games you're going to get into this year, and you can hold them to under 20 points, hey, that's probably not a problem. But the issue is, offensively, how are you going to gel? And I understand they brought in someone like Malik Benson, who was arguably one of the top junior college players out there at the wide receiver position. You get back Ja'Cory Brooks and Jermaine Burton, right? You have a running back in Jace McClellan who had 800 total yards and 10 touchdowns last year. I understand that, but you also lost a couple of offensive linemen that were the better part of your offensive line too. To me, really, they're going to go about as far as the offensive line and the quarterback are going to take them this year, man. That's really the way I look at it.
Yeah, and like I said, we haven't touched even on the defensive side of the ball really here. This is where I just have this thing with Bama this year. It's like, and I'm going to get, ran up and down on the internet and YouTube here in the next 5 minutes, but it's like, yeah, you're right, Christian. 11-2. What? I mean, you shouldn't be bagging on a team that went 11-2 last year, but right, it speaks to Bama's dominance and Nick Saban's dominance, right? But the way they lost last year, giving up the amount of points against an LSU and Tennessee, and that's no knock on LSU or Tennessee last year, but Bama just did not look like a typical Bama team. In years past, and I know times have changed, and not every team's the same exactly, but that's why we're on this fucking YouTube channel. It's my biggest thing is like the quarterback position, as you touched on, and here's my thing. I just mentioned the 3 quarterbacks. There is no Mac Jones back there. There is no Bryce Young, Jalen Hurts, Tua. I mean, we could go through the long list of quarterbacks, and it's like they've never had an issue at quarterback. Now you do, and it is a very open race, I think, between these 3. I think Nick Saban is probably pulling his hair out, thinking, fuck, I got, 3 dumpster fires walking around here that I don't know who the hell I'm going to play. This isn't the Alabamas of the 2010s where they just ran the ball with Derrick Henry and Mark Ingram and all those guys. We could name the long list of fucking running backs, Josh Jacobs and Brian Robinson Jr. I could go through a whole list of studs they've had back there. But the big thing is, and here's the other thing you touched on, wide receivers. Holy shit, do we need to bring up again for the 100th time about how many great wide receivers have come through there? I'm not sure they got a wide receiver right now, Christian, that's even draftable. Like, they led the nation in drops last year, if I'm not mistaken. So if let's say Monroe starts. The 1 out of 5 balls that he does throw that are good, this isn't Bryce Young back there who was great at accuracy. Like, are they going to be able to catch the ball? Like, that's what kills me this year with Alabama, Christian. I just, like, offensively, and we'll talk a little defense here shortly, but it's like, I'm just like, I've seen a lot of things where they have Bama placing in the, top 4 this year. I guess I am not one of those people. I don't know. We'll talk about that here a little later too, but, like, I think Bama, in the schedule they have with Texas, I think it's week 3 or 4, they play them. That's a big game. We've talked a lot about Texas and, their potential outcome this year and all that. You got LSU on the schedule. You got some tough teams. Ole Miss, Auburn's never an easy game between those two. Obviously, no matter what the record is. I'm very interested, Christian, as this season goes on here, and once we start, where Bama really is at right now. Because I think Nick Saban, personally, I'm gonna say this on air, they're in kind of a question mark year whether Nick Saban is kind of lost his mind, which I think he personally has as far as his interviews go, but like who they are as a program right now. Like, it's a very big question mark because you're not returning a ton of studs. You lost Jahmyr Gibbs. You lost fucking Bryce Young. And you lost your best defensive player, Will Anderson Jr. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's where I'm at, Christian. I want to hear your take a little bit more on these thoughts, and I know we're going to dig into the defense here a little bit.
Yeah, I think you said it best. I mean, listen, the quarterback wide receiver connection is such a rhythmic thing, right? Like, if you struggle to get in rhythm you played wide receiver and I played quarterback. It was about 150 pounds ago. That's neither here nor there, though, right? But when you struggle to complete passes, right, that makes everything that much more. The pressure is on you that much more, and I think that starts leading to some of these drops, some of these mental mistakes, and it's really tough, right? So, when you go out and you hire a guy like Tommy Rees, who, by the way, had Tyler Buckner at Notre Dame, they finished ranked, I think, 60th or something like that in the country. As far as total offense was concerned, the last time that we watched Tyler Buckner, really get on the field and do anything, I think it was against Marshall, if I'm not mistaken, and they lost that game. He struggled, and then he got hurt late in that game, and then obviously he was out.
Right, but now you're playing in the SEC. The SEC. It ain't gonna get any easier.
No, exactly. It's not going to get any easier. You're going to have to replace Marshall with, and there's a couple of cakewalk games on that schedule, but you're arguably going up against the hardest conference in all of college football, and it's not going to get easy at any point. So, of course, if you're an Alabama fan, you don't give a shit if you beat South. I mean, you do care, but you almost don't even go to the game against Middle Tennessee or South Florida or Chattanooga, right? I mean, you don't care if your quarterback puts up 800 yards in that game if you can't beat Texas or Texas A&M or Tennessee.
Right.
So it's almost redundant. Now, talking about that, let's segue into the defense here, right?
Yes.
Because again, we talk about this all the time. They lost a shit ton of talent and production on that defensive side of the ball. At Will Anderson Jr., they had Henry To'oTo'o who's out. You have, if I'm not mistaken, they had DJ Turner who's off that defense. They had or maybe it wasn't DJ Turner. I was thinking of Dallas Turner, but they had, a big stud defender. There's a defensive tackle that's gone. They've got multiple members of that secondary who aren't there anymore. Just so many different pieces off that defense are gone. And I think that when you stop and look at it, yes, you do get back Dallas Turner and Malachi Moore, right? They're going to have to step up this year. But Chris, the thing to me that makes that defense, a big question mark is the defensive line. They don't scare me up front like they have in years past. They just don't. I mean, it's super reliant on big defensive linemen who eat up blocks and let the backers fly to the ball. And I'm just worried that, they may not be able to be dominant like they have been in the past, right?
That's the big question to me, and that's why I was kind of trying to tie this all into. I brought up the stats. They finished top 10 in defense, right? If you look at the stats, but these stats are misleading last year. When you guys played somebody, and I mean guys as in Alabama fans, you guys got your doors blown off on the defensive side of the ball, and that's, I guess, to me is shocking because it's a Nick Saban-led team, right? He's a big defensive guy. They put a ton of guys in the NFL. We don't need to go down that list either. They're really not returning much. I think they got Kool-Aid McKinstry back. I think he's back there. He's going to be an NFL player, obviously. But, they don't have much else coming back. And so when you do play those teams, you play the LSUs of the world. You're going to play Texas, who should have a high-octane offense, bringing back a shit ton of starters from last year, especially off that offense. Are you guys going to give up 30, 35, 40 points a game? It's going to be tough. You don't have Bryce Young to lean on this year. This is where I have this huge discrepancy between you got away with it last year in a few games because Bryce Young, I don't care what anybody says, he was an elite college quarterback. We'll see what he does in the NFL, but he was elite as a college quarterback. These guys couldn't hold his jockstrap, and I don't even care if they play good. I'm just being honest, Christian. None of these guys are even in his realm of talent. So it's like, who are you going to lean on? And then you brought up another good point we don't talk about it much, Jahmyr Gibbs. He's in the NFL now. He's on the Lions. So I know they got a freshman running back, and I apologize, I don't remember his name, but he looked like the best player in the spring game, personally. So where's the defense at? That's a big question mark with me this year, and where Alabama goes, and we'll get into the record predictions here shortly, Christian, I'm sure, is I know where the offense is kind of going to be. I think personally, and I'll talk about that here a little later, the defense to me is just I have big questions about their defense.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I know a lot of people, and I've seen these comments get kind of thrown around, specifically with the Florida State Alabama video that we just put out. But it's talking about, well, Alabama has way more 5-star players, stacked than Florida State does. Okay, I understand that. Here's the thing, though. Florida State brings back more production that have actually played at this level than Alabama does. Than most people in the country does.
Right, Florida State brings back, I think, almost more production than any team in the country, if I'm not mistaken.
And I get it. They're coming off of having the top-ranked recruiting class, right? But it takes time at this level for true freshmen to get up to the standard. I mean, hell, just look at Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M. They had the best recruiting class of all time, and arguably, 5 wins. Now I understand. Hey, I'm not trying to say Jimbo is by any means Nick Saban, right? I'm not trying to say that at all. I just think that when we sit back and we look at this, it just takes time in this conference, especially if you're trying to compete and you're trying to have a lot of guys plug and play that have never played at this level before. It's super difficult.
No, you're right, and I don't have much more to add as far as offense and defense goes. Like I said, defense is going to be a huge question mark. I don't buy into how many stars you have, Christian. I'm not that guy that I don't really give a fuck, honestly, personally. Yeah, it's cool to get a 5-star player. It's great. But there's a hell of a lot of 4-stars out there that can ball too. It's all about coaching. It's all about the kids want to. It's all about the program you're on, that staff. I mean, there's so many things that go into that. It's awesome you get a 5-star, but not every 5-star fucking pans out to be an NFL player either. I mean, we could go down a list of NFL players that are 2 and 3 stars, so that are obviously Hall of Famers and Pro Bowlers. So, yeah, I'm not big on that argument, but I will say this though: Alabama, their defense to me overall, as far as both sides of the ball, is I know where they're going to finish overall, like on offense. I have a good idea, but man, what are you going to do on defense when you play the LSUs of the world and Jalen Daniels, when you play Texas and Quinn Ewers and that receiving core that comes back, which I think is probably right there with Ohio State as far as the best in the country. I think they're going to struggle this year, Christian. I truly do.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you, but how much are they going to struggle? Well, let's just find out. By God, Chris? What do you think they're going to? How do you think they're going to finish this year?
All right, so you're going to give me a little time here with this one, and when I say struggle, this is sad. We got Middle Tennessee State off the rip. That no question there. Here's where I'm going to piss off the Bama fans. I think Texas wins this game. I truly do. And this is no knock on on Alabama, excuse me. It's new quarterback. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be. I don't think we're going to know until the first game of the season, and we'll see how that guy even plays, whether it's Buckner, Milroe, or Simpson. But my point is, Texas already knows who their quarterback's going to be. Texas already's got a lot of returning studs back with Steve Sarkisian and that whole offense. So I'm going to give the nod to Texas here. I think Nick Saban, I think there's going to be a lot of drama. ESPN's going to blow it up, Christian. Holy shit, is Nick Saban done, right? We're going to hear about all that bullshit. But here's the big thing. So I got an L at Texas. We got Southern Florida. Ole Miss, I think, will be a tougher game. Lane Kiffin, let's be honest, Christian, we could have this discussion on another day about Ole Miss. I don't know what the hell Lane Kiffin has really done at Ole Miss. He's done a decent job. I think he beat Alabama a couple years ago. Did he not, Christian, or am I wrong on that? No, he did. He did not. But he played him close.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think that will be a tough game. I'm kind of high on Ole Miss this year, but we'll leave it at that since we're breezing through this. So I got that as a win for Alabama. So we're looking at 3-1 right there. Mississippi State, no problem. A&M at A&M, tough game. A&M has a history of playing Bama tough. I still think Bama gets out of there, Christian. I truly do. Then on the road at Tennessee. If this was the Tennessee team of last year, that was Hendon Hooker. He was my boy. He's not playing quarterback. This will probably surprise you. I still have a win for Alabama there. The big one is God, that's a tough stretch of games, by the way. A&M, I missed Arkansas there. I think Alabama beats Arkansas. But you had A&M, Arkansas, who's no pushover, Tennessee, and LSU, Christian. Those are all in the... Oh, I take that back. Jeez, I can't fucking read. That's at A&M versus Arkansas, Tennessee at home. You're laughing at me because I'm old and I can't read. Texas is a little small over here. But at LSU, right? My big loss is at LSU, Texas so far. I'm really murdering this whole thing. You got Kentucky, who is no pushover. They're a physical brand of football over there at Kentucky, Christian. But Chattanooga and then Auburn. Auburn, I think, is a tough game. I know it's at Auburn, but I think Bama wins. I got them going 10-2 regular season since I completely fucked this whole goddamn thing up. I want to hear your thoughts, Christian. I have a 10-2, and that's not a down year. But for Bama fans, it probably is. I don't think they make the top 4. I don't think they go to the playoff.
Yeah, I think exactly like you said. I mean, that would be the apocalypse, but let me kind of bring it in a little bit further here. I got them at 9-3.
Ooh.
With losses to Texas, Tennessee, and LSU.
Okay.
I think that, LSU beat them last year. It was a very close game. Again, you got to look, LSU returns, they're up there as far as returning production in college football. I'm very high on LSU. I think they've got a really good shot to beat them. Just like you said, I think Texas should have beat them last year. If Texas had any kind of quarterback that could do anything, the problem is the quarterback they had was run around on one leg. He was hurt the whole game, and I mean, it felt like it really delayed the hell out of that game even longer. But he still did all he could. I think, if Quinn Ewers gets hurt this year, you got Malik Murphy, who will absolutely baptize him, I think.
Jesus Christ, dude. There's a lot of drama about him right now, looking amazing.
Yeah. So
preseason.
Texas is probably going to beat him. Tennessee, like you said, dude, Hendon Hooker's gone, but Joe Milton, he can light you up too. So all you need to do is just have that one game. And you touched on it, Chris, that slate where they go see Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, and Arkansas, Tennessee, LSU, and Kentucky. They could have more losses than just what I just said.
Right, and let me. I wanted to talk on this because I murdered the shit out of my the way I was reading that. I don't know a lot of teams, even Georgia, if they had to play Ole Miss, Mississippi State, A&M, Arkansas, Tennessee, LSU, and Kentucky in that 6-game stretch there. That's quite a feat. I don't care really who you are. I know it's Georgia, but I'm just, you know what I mean. That's tough to come out of that thing 6-0. I think people knock a lot on Kentucky, like they're just Kentucky and they think of the basketball program, which has been trashed the last couple of years, by the way. But their football team's a physical brand. With Stoops down there, man, they do play a physical style of football. Georgia says it every year, too, when they play them. Like, I think Kirby Smart even says that, which you got his visor on, and you look like a woman. I will say that, though, they play a physical brand of football there. And then, obviously, LSU and Tennessee, to me, is that kind of toss-up game. I don't know what Joe Milton's going to be. I just, God, if Tennessee could beat him 2 years in a row, holy shit, the Hilltoppers are going to be running around fucking naked everywhere, bro. Like, that would be huge for Tennessee. But Arkansas's not a pushover either. We kind of did a deep dive on them, and then, like, I'm backtracking here. But, like, A&M, I mean, Jimbo's got to get it done one of these fucking years for the amount of money he's getting paid. That should be a competitive game, right? I mean, that's a tough stretch. And that's, I guess, my point, guys, is, like, Bama's not got an easy schedule by any means. I mean, by me saying 10-2, I think I'm actually doing them a favor. There's an outcome, Christian, where they go 8-4 this year.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, kind of after like really digging into the schedule here, I mean, how likely is it that they lose more than 4 games this year?
Ooh. Lose more than 4 for a Nick Saban team? Holy shit!
Yeah, maybe they lose 4 games or more.
It's a possibility when you look at this, and we're forgetting the one at the bottom. Yeah, I mean, I know Auburn people hate me, but I mean, Auburn, Alabama, you can throw the records out the window. That game never matters as far as records go. It's always a good game, always.
Yeah, I know when we touched on Auburn, I said, it would not surprise me one bit if Auburn had 5, 6, 7 wins this year, and one of them was Bama.
Right. I would agree with you, 100%.
I mean, again, I'm not going to start throwing out all the hot takes in the world here, like Alabama's going to go 2-10. I mean, that might be ridiculous. But I do think that this could be, if last year was a down year, this could be a catastrophic year. Just from that standpoint, right? Where you could have potentially 4 losses or more. Yeah. It just really depends on how the offense plays. There's some other things getting floated out there, and we haven't even talked about this yet. That we touched on it earlier in the episode. We were talking about Northwestern. Tommy Rees is at the top of that list right now for possible candidates. Could you imagine if your offensive coordinator, after losing all of that talent, everything like that to the draft, about a month out from the season, jumps ship and goes to become the coach over at Northwestern?
Wow. And I mean, if you're Northwestern, do you blame them, right? I mean, they want a head coach. Tommy Rees is, I like to think he's not proven, but I mean, if he does jump, Christian, yeah, what do you do with Bama? I mean, what do you do with them then? I mean, I knock them down a peg or two then if that even happens. Like you said, a month before the season starts. I mean, Nick Saban isn't going to take over the offensive play duties. I can tell you that. Like he's always had, somebody in there that is usually a coach that had a tough time at a school, right? We could bring up all the people under his coaching tree, right? But I mean, like what? I mean, I'm with you, dude. I'm with you. Bama's very interesting to me, man. We've caught a lot of heat on this Florida State Alabama take. Who's a better team or who will have a better year? But Bama to me, man, with that schedule, Christian, or just a sheer question marks on kind of both sides of the ball this year for the first time in I don't know how many years, Christian, with Bama. You know what I mean? We always kind of knew what to expect with Bama. Pretty much just pencil them in the playoffs every year. I can't do that this year. I've seen some preseason polls though where people have them finishing in the top 4, and I'm like, damn, man, I think you're just putting too much faith in Saban because it's Nick Saban.
And that's literally the argument that they give. Well, it's Nick Saban. You know what I mean? Well, okay, but that's not a reason why someone's going to win. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that don't mean shit.
You think the old Lane Train or Steve Sarkisian or Heupel, they give two shits that it's Nick Saban? Okay, it's Nick Saban. We're just not going to show up that day. Just give him the win.
Yep. No, I know this. Yeah, this isn't played on paper. You know what I mean? Like it's. That's where I'm like, I just think some of these Bama fans, I'm like, man, you guys, I get it. You guys have had the craziest run probably ever in college sports, and I mean sports, but it's like, damn, dude, like, I don't see it.
Look at the NFL for a second. Look at Belichick. You know, it wasn't that long ago. Belichick was, I mean, I still think he's one of the greatest coaches of all time, especially what he was able to do with Tom Brady. But eventually, you see Tom Brady left, and now they kind of look like they're in the middle of getting ready to rebuild something.
Yeah, no, they struggled. They didn't make the play. You know, they barely make the playoffs. I mean, I know this because my Dolphins are in their division. I mean, it's not a knock on Bill Belichick, but eventually, you know, I don't want to say father time, which is, you know, against his side, but I mean, it's against all of us. But it's like you can't be dominant forever. And I've said this in a few podcasts, Christian. I took some heat for it. It was like, I think Nick Saban is on the decline. I just do. And it's not against Nick Saban. It's just the run he's had. People at Alabama, I can imagine, are just so used to competing and winning national titles every year. Eventually that ends at some point. You know what I mean?
That's why you go to Bama. I mean, you look at what happened, again, not to keep referencing Texas A&M, but they had that loaded class, and then they won 5 games last year. Everybody jumped ship. Now, I'm not saying Alabama's going to win 5 games and you're going to have a bunch of people transfer.
Right.
But, you know, you start losing 4 games this year, you'll probably have some people hit the portal.
Yeah. No, I do. And like I said, I could see Bama. It would not shock me if Bama goes 8-4. I know that sounds like a fucking crazy hot take. It would shock me, though. Honestly. I mean, Christian, me and you are not not to get on you and I, but I mean, we're not just run-of-the-mill people that barely follow college football. I mean, I think if you guys, I'm sure most YouTubers follow other people too, and I think you're crazy if you think Bama's just a shoo-in for the playoff this year. I'm like, I don't. I think it's going to be, if they make the playoff this year, I think that is an overachieving year, and I can't believe I'm saying it about Nick Saban.